I'll vote on the motion to allow trustee Andrade Zuniga to attend tonight's meeting remotely. Please note that this motion must receive a 2/3 vote to pass, meaning 4 affirmative votes, and trustee Andrade Zuniga will not participate in the vote. Okay, I'm going to do a roll call. Trustee Jacobson?
Aye.
Trustee Chavez?
Aye.
Trustee Land?
Aye.
And I will vote aye, so it passes 4-0. The motion passes. I want to note that because of the board member will be attending remotely, members of the public will also be able to attend the meeting remotely. Can staff please address how this can be accomplished?
Yes, this can be done through raising your hand over Zoom, where you can be called on for public comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Finally, there is one last statutory requirement in relation to this emergency remote attendance by a board member. Before any votes on action items this evening, trustee Andrade Zuniga must identify if there are any individual 18 years of age or older in the room with her when she is voting, and if so, the relationship of that person to her. We will now proceed with our meeting agenda.
And there is no one here over 18.
Trustee, the president, you're in charge.
Thank you. All right, welcome everybody. This is the meeting of the San Mateo Union High School District Board of Trustees. I'm calling the open session to order. Today is September 11th, and it is now 7:16 p.m. I will start with a roll call. Trustee Griffin.
Present.
Trustee Chavez.
Present.
Trustee Jacobson.
Present.
Trustee Land.
Present.
And I am present. Tonight we have a team from Hannah Interpreting as our Spanish interpreters. For those who would like to attend the meeting virtually in Spanish, that option is available. Hannah Interpreting, would you please communicate that for us this evening? Thank you. Hannah Interpreting, are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry, it was bad connection. El día de hoy tenemos interpretación en español para los que desean escuchar la junta simultáneamente.
Gracias. If you wish to view closed captions of this meeting, please view the meeting on the SMUHSD board meeting YouTube channel. The link to the YouTube channel can be found on our website. You may view the captions in English as we live stream our meeting tonight, and you may view the captions in a variety of other languages if you choose to watch after this meeting has ended. Viewers may request additional accommodations by calling 650-558-2201. For our deaf and hard of hearing community, we have a team from Hannah Interpreting Services, and they will be interpreting our meeting this evening. We would like to ask everyone to speak at a clear and reasonable pace for our interpreters. Thank you. We can begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Trustee, before you, and this is not scripted, I would like to ask, and I'm asking for a moment of silence in memory of the tragedy of 9/11 and those who lost their lives. And then maybe I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, everybody, would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. In report of the items in closed session, the actions taken in closed session. The Board of Trustees took the following actions during closed session. Upon the motion of trustee Jacobson, and I'm sorry, it was upon the motion. Yes, I'm sorry. Upon the motion of trustee Jacobson and seconded by trustee Chavez, move to approve an agreement to waive student expulsion, hearing and stipulation for expulsion case 24/25-1 with a vote of 5-0. Upon the motion of trustee Land and seconded by trustee Chavez, move to approve an agreement to waive student expulsion hearing and agree to stay of the expulsion recommendation for case 24/25-2 with a vote of 5-0. We will now move to adopt the agenda. The Board of Trustees may either adopt the agenda as presented or make a change to the agenda through a motion, second, and a majority vote. The Brown Act prohibits any additions to the agenda without a 72-hour public notice for regularly scheduled board meetings. Are there any questions or comments from the Board of Trustees or Superintendent with respect to the agenda?
None.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any. Okay. We will take questions or comments from the public. Ms. Aquino, are there any questions or comments in person?
There are none.
How about online?
There are none.
Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by trustee Griffin, second by trustee Land. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
I'm sorry, I have to do a roll call, right? Because I'm
Correct.
online. Thank you. Okay, I will start with a roll call. Trustee Griffin,
Aye.
trustee Land,
Aye.
trustee Chavez,
Aye.
trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
and I vote yes as well. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, public comments. If you are joining us in person and wish to make a comment about an agenda item or during the public comment section at the beginning of the agenda, please fill out a request to address the board form and submit it to the secretary. This form should be given to the secretary before the agenda item begins. If you are joining us virtually, use the raise hand feature on Zoom to be recognized. When invited to do so, your camera must be on before you are called upon to make a comment. We will call on you to begin your comment once we have promoted you into the meeting. If your camera is not operational, please email your comments to the Board of Trustees at board, BOARD, at SMUHSD.org. Please note that the comments are limited to 3 minutes. The board president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public comment depending upon the topic and number of persons wishing to be heard. Ms. Aquino, is there anyone in person for public comments?
Yes, we have Alberto Bermudez.
Can I ask how many public comments are there in person so far?
We only have one tonight.
Okay, great, thank you. And please remember to speak at a reasonable pace for our interpreters. Thank you. Go ahead for the first public comment.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm a San Mateo Adult School student. I want to my voice be the voice for a lot of the students. So I want to say to every one of you how helpful it's for me, the San Mateo Adult School. It helped me a lot. It helped me to grow on different areas. So the English, the one I have right now, it's not compared to like 2 years ago. So it helped me to grow on my family and my job. So it gave me a lot of opportunities. It not only to me. A lot of my students, the one is studying with me. So sorry, I'm still learning, but it helped me a lot. San Mateo Adult School, it was a good tool for me for growing, for found a new job. It made me feel confident to do a lot of different kind of things. So with my childs too, it helped me to all the homework, like to learn more English. So it's very big thing on my life, being an San Mateo Adult School student. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. That's awesome. Ms. Aquino, is there anyone else?
No, that's all.
Thank you. Is there anybody online?
No, there are none.
Great. Okay, we'll move on to governing board comments, and forgive me for my cat that appears on the screen, floating in the
Que aparece en la pantalla.
Okay, do any members of the board of
¿Algún miembro de la junta?
Oh, did we
I'm
create
sorry. We are hearing some background. Oh, thank you. Do any members of the board have any comments? We can begin with Trustee Griffin.
Well, thank you, and I will be quick because we're behind schedule, but I had not seen a girls' flag football game till this evening, so it looks like they practice on our regular Thursdays because I've watched practice, but I actually saw Aragon and San Mateo out here in the on the San Mateo field, and that field really looks great. And those, that logo in the end zone is just flashy, so I enjoyed it.
Excellent. Thank you. Trustee Chavez?
Thank you. I will be quick as well. And thank you, Trustee Griffin, for that moment of silence. That I was contemplating that or trying to figure out when to put that in. So thank you for that. The other thing I wanted to mention was for those of you who follow our schedule, we normally meet on Thursdays, but we're meeting tonight because tomorrow is back to school night at many of our schools. So that's exciting. I look forward to dropping by a couple of schools, and I want to encourage all the parents who might be online to drop by the school and any of our schools. Well, obviously you'd go to the school where your student goes to, but all the time, every time I attend a back to school night for my daughters that attended Cappuccino, I always felt very welcome. And we always had a lot of student ambassadors helping the parents find their way to the many, many classes that we have. And so I'm sure all the school sites have ambassadors and staff is there to help too. So it's going to be a very exciting time tomorrow night. Thank you.
Trustee Jacobson.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to report that I went to the Career Expo last night here at San Mateo High School. I want to thank the school for hosting it and to Nancy Kane for organizing such a wonderful event. I learned a lot being there, met a lot of new people, and was excited to see all of the students who were there. I brought my 2 middle schoolers even to get a taste of what's out there. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Trustee Land.
I'll be brief as well. I was going to say, I'm glad we did have a moment of silence in honor of 9/11 and the tragedy that happened. I remember being a 7th grade teacher way back then and having to talk to our students about it. And it was very impactful, and I'm glad we did honor that tonight. Second, yes, I'm just going to repeat the same thing. I'm really happy to see back to school. I hope I see people. I'm going to probably go to BHS and see what's going on over there. So thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I also echo thank you for that moment of silence. And I also thank you, Superintendent Booker, for mentioning the school shootings that have been happening in one of your communications to the community. It's really unfortunate that this is the biggest threat to our kids, gun violence. So I appreciate that, you brought that up. If there's anybody that still needs any assistance with mental health services, we have amazing wellness counselors, and there's Cure Solace, and there's a lot of great help out there in the community. So thank you. I also wanted to mention that we started our Equity Advisory Committee meetings, and we had a meeting last week or a couple weeks ago. I can't remember now. What was neat was that some of our students showed up and are participating now, and we have a lot more new people, and it was really great. I also wanted to mention that our school board association, the San Mateo County School Board Association, for all of the trustees out there, have already started our meetings. And so if people, want to join us, please do. We have a lot of great information for school board trustees, and then also just for the community, for us to support our schools and our students. I always want to also recognize our translators, our interpreters, our Spanish speaking interpreters, and our ASL interpreters, our IT folks. Thank you very much for everything you do. And yes, welcome back to school, everyone. Back to school night is super important. You get to meet the teachers and see what's going on for the rest of the school year. So thank you. Okay, we'll move on to communications of the Board of Trustees. Superintendent Booker, are there any communications?
None this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Recognition. Are there any recognitions tonight?
None this evening. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull any of the items from the consent agenda tonight? And please help me if I don't see a hand.
I'll move
Aye.
adoption.
Oh.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead. I second.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Trustee Griffin and a second by Trustee Jacobson. We'll start with a roll call. Trustee Griffin,
Aye.
Trustee Chavez,
Aye.
Trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
Trustee Land,
Aye.
and I also vote yes. I thank you. Motion passes. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed the public comments. I apologize. Are there any public comments, Ms. Aquino?
No, there are none.
How about online?
No, there are none.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we will move on to regular reports. Report from the superintendent. Go
Thank you
ahead,
very
Mr.
much. Thank you. I also want to echo thanks for San Mateo High School, everyone who helped coordinate the career fair. Amazing, such great participation, so many members of our broader community coming in to support our students and families. So I really, really appreciate all the work that went into that event. The bulk of my superintendent announcement is really around September 11th. On this 11th day of September, we marked 23 years since our nation came under devastating attack by terrorists seeking to destroy our spirit and cherished values. On Patriot Day, we honor the precious lives lost in this tragedy and the heroism of all the courageous first responders and civilians who rushed into harm's way to help others. By a joint resolution approved December 18th, 2001, U.S. Congress designated September 11th of each year as Patriot Day, and by public law 111-13, approved April 21st, 2009, the Congress has requested the observance of September 11th as an annually recognized National Day of Service and Remembrance. Today, we also pay tribute to the selfless individuals who answered the call to defend their fellow Americans, unified in grief, and an unshakable resolve to protect our freedoms and way of life. In the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, 776 Californians were among the more than 7,000 Americans who died defending our democracy. With state flags at half-staff on this day of remembrance, let us honor the memory of those we have lost and recognize all the survivors and heroes whose strength and perseverance reflect the very best of our nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to the San Mateo Union High School District Teachers Association.
Good evening, President Andrade Zanita and members of the board, district cabinet. I'll be brief tonight. The last time we met, we were anxiously anticipating our next negotiations meeting, which happened on the 27th. As you all likely know, the parties were able to reach a tentative agreement, which is as I'll quote Trustee Lees Dwyer, former Trustee Lees Dwyer, saying that a good agreement is a sign that nobody's really perfectly happy, but nonetheless, it's an agreement that is based on trust, on fairness, and on professionalism. I want to recognize Dr. Black and the rest of the district negotiating team for, again, their professionalism and willingness to work collaboratively to address the needs of not only the Teachers Association and the teachers in the district, but really all of the employees and all of the people of the community of this district, and support what we all do for the community. We are currently voting on the tentative agreement. We should be ready to present that at the next board meeting. We are, again, just pleased with the collegiality and professionalism. Also pleased to see the report on the unaudited actuals tonight. Seeing again that the district is in good financial shape, with an ending balance that has increased over the years, which is something that we always recognize and want to look toward as we consider how we utilize our funding and how we spend it, again, on the community that we serve. And again, I'll echo a number of people who have mentioned back to school night. Teachers are anxiously preparing for back to school night. It's the one time that we have the opportunity to sort of meet the parents and get engaged with the families on a formal and somewhat informal basis. And it's often an enjoyable experience, even if we do have to stay late at night. This is the first time, I want to say, in many years that a board meeting has not coincided with back to school night. So personally, I appreciate that, so that I can still be at the meetings and also attend back to school night. And as I mentioned last time, I do want to really recognize the classified staff and all the work that they have done to prepare the campuses again for opening, but also seeing a lot of sort of preparation for the big family event this week as well. So thanks to them, and that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, going on to the report from CSCA, Chapter 519.
They don't have a rep here this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now the report of the San Mateo Adult School Teachers Association.
Good evening. My name is Jesse Tolliver. I am an instructor in ESL and the adult secondary education. This is my first time here. First time I'll be representing the union, but this probably won't be the last time. So thank you, Board President Ligia Andrade Zuniga, VP Robert H. Griffin, Terry Chavez, and Jennifer Jacobson, Greg Land, and Superintendent Randall Booker for the opportunity to speak tonight. We, the CFT Union and staff of the San Mateo Adult and Career Education Campus, want to share with you some updates from our campus. As you know, our school currently serves 3,828 students. Of that number, 2,947 of them are enrolled in our ESL program. Tonight, in light of those numbers, we would like to share an update on that ESL program, highlighting areas of significance in this growth. We also want to share updates from our transition navigators, who help students move on from our adult ed programs to academic and professional opportunities within the community. So some of the areas of significance from the ESL program: number one is positive momentum and collaboration. There's been an increased teacher presence in our involvement on campus. Since COVID, morale had been low, being online, students away from campus, the morale had shifted and teacher involvement had decreased, but we are seeing a shift. There were more teachers that attended school prep and planning days for this school year than there had been during previous semesters, which was a positive. Also, we've seen a lot of strong collaboration among our teachers. And this morale lift is demonstrated by the teachers who've stepped up to host and attend professional developments, the PLC meetings, as well as collaborating on preparations for the new semester, like helping with ESL enrollment, which I'll get to in a minute, or not a minute, like a couple seconds. But the buzz on campus shows a positivity and the confidence in the direction of our program. Number two, our enrollment success. So our high enrollment, even with the numbers that we've seen, there are still 42, as of this afternoon, 42 students who are on a wait list for our ESL classes. And we wanted to show our success off. So we've asked teachers to take pictures and, so we can put those on our social media channels so that people know what we're out and about and doing at our adult school. Also, because of the large numbers, we want to get more information about our student demographics because we also want to find out how students are getting to campus. We want to know, we know anecdotally of students who drive, who walk, who take the bus, but we would like to get hard numbers on the actual varieties of modes and where folks are located within our, within our community. Number three, would also like to recognize and give some team appreciation. There's been hard work and dedication. We want to recognize and thank the ESL teachers and admin for hosting 8 registration sessions, ensuring the program was ready for the start of the school year, as well as the spirit that has come out of this. We want to shout out our team's willingness to step up and step in during our busy times. So our key takeaways are that the ESL program at SMUHSD is experiencing positive momentum and increased teacher involvement where we had previously seen shifts in the other direction since the pandemic. Enrollment numbers for our ESL classes are high, showing the strong demand for the program within the community. And we are acknowledging the ESL team for their hard work and dedication to making the function and flow of the program as successful as it is. In addition, this is the second half, we want to highlight the work of our transition navigators, Dina Suarez and Patty VR, who in the fiscal year of 23 to 2024, connected over 121 students in our community with much needed services, such as housing, food, and other community resources. And on top of that, referred 87 of our adult ed students fully prepared academically and linguistically from our adult ed and ESL programs to CSM, Skyline, and Kenyatta colleges for the fall 2024 semester. So we've had a success of that many students. Patty VR is also asked to share the following updates that at the CSM Back to School Bash, which was on Monday, the 9th, SMUHSD staff members attended, and we're also joined by 25 current and former SMUHSD students who are currently at CSM. So it was kind of a party. We were present not just here down on the flats, but we're also up there on the hill. At the District Career Expo, which was mentioned earlier, SMUHSD staff was also there with an information table, and we had a lot of great interest in the programs as well by high schoolers, their parents, and community members. And as an aside, I'd like to point out that in my own ESL class, I have 4 students, at least 4, who have their own high schoolers in our high schools here, 2 in San Mateo and 2 at Hillsdale. So the statement that was made at the during our opening session before the school year started, this vividly illustrates that statement that we at SMUHSD help educate the whole family because we also educate their parents. So, and finally, this is one navigator success story. One of our ESL students, Maria, was recently hired at John Muir Elementary School in San Bruno as a part-time library aide. This was possible due to SMUHSD's partnership with NovaWorks, the San Mateo County Employment and Training Agency, and the fact that Nova holds office hours on our campus in room 29, which is the navigator's office where Dina and Patty are, and that NovaWorks was the one that helped Maria with her resume, her job search, the application, and the interview preparation. So shout out to our navigators for helping her get that job. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tolliver. Great report. Okay, we'll go on to special reports and appearances. Superintendent Booker, are there any special reports and appearances?
Yes, thank you very much. So this evening, based on request and feedback from the Board of Trustees. Tonight we'll be discussing cell
Esta noche
phone,
vamos a hablar sobre
We're
cell
getting
phone use in
some-
schools. And this evening, Dr. Kemke and Mr. Simmons are going to be providing a brief presentation. I want to point the community to the memo attached to the board agenda because it gives a lot of detailed information. But tonight is really about our current policies and practices, research-based thinking, and what steps we could take moving forward. So with that, I'm going to introduce Mr. Simmons. You're up to bat first. Say it one more time. I'm up to bat first. That's right. I just can't see the presentation. So I'm going to introduce Mr. Simmons, who's going to in turn introduce me. It's super nice. We have this well scripted, as you can tell. If we could have the presentation up, please. Thank you. There we go. All right, you can go on or hit slideshow when it loads.
Slow computers.
We're just going to be patient. All right, there we go. You can go on to the next slide. Thank you. Great. All right, so tonight we are going to talk about some background of what we're doing in our schools and our policies, some recent legislation. I'm sure the community has heard from the governor and others. Even today, there was a push for the Surgeon General. This isn't specific to cell phones, but definitely to social media applications, to put warnings on social media applications. And obviously what we're all here for is the impact on students' focus, their academic performance, and their social emotional development. So in meeting with, is that me? That's Dr. Kemke.
This is my slide.
Thank you very much. Go for it. That's all you.
All right, just as an overview of what we currently have in place at our schools, all of our schools do have policies that either restrict or prohibit the use of cell phones during class time. And that ranges from using pouches into the classroom to both Peninsula and San Mateo who are using Yonder pouches. We have Principal Shu and Dr. Campagna here from both of those schools. And the Yonder pouches actually prohibit the use of the phones during the school day. So we have a range of policies happening at our campuses, and they do fall under what is being asked by the state. Our other schools have written policies or classroom agreements that vary, some of them depending on teacher preference, some of them are school-wide. All of them do have some type of discipline that go along with students who are using phones inappropriately or who are overly distracted by them. In the memo, as Superintendent Booker referenced, there's additional data about discipline that has happened because of phones. I do want to mention that San Mateo has quite a few infractions, but those are not infractions of cell phone use. Those are infractions related to Yonder pouch kind of management. And some of that data shows you that the more you pay attention, the more that you're going to see some of those things happening. So they're just paying real close attention to the use of phones and making sure that the Yonder pouches are being used with fidelity. So a bit of background. In addition to recent legislation, Assembly Bill 3216 specifically addresses the concerns that I think most all of us have had around cell phones, both because of the ways they distract students, but also because of emerging research that they really do have an impact on students' social, emotional health. The Assembly Bill directs districts to develop and adopt policies that either limit or prohibit the use of phones by students, smartphones in particular. So I think that students are bringing flip phones, it probably would be okay, but this is generally talking about smartphones. So really tonight's presentation is for us to give some background first around what we're already doing, and then I'm going to pass it over to Mr. Simmons, who's going to talk a bit more about the research around cell phones. And I think we're keeping this brief just so we can have a discussion around it as well.
Yeah, so it's kind of covered in the memory.
Bueno,
Mike.
Oh, sorry.
bueno.
There we go. Whoop, is it on now? Okay. Red means go. So yeah, broadly speaking, this is an
Bueno.
understudied area. There's a lot of kind of new research that's kind of trying to get at this. And so you'll see there's some research that we found around banning cell phones having some positive impact on actual test scores, but it was in a really small study in England. There's not a ton of other kind of deep correlation between student outcomes and cell phone use. So that's work that we'll have to continue to pay attention to. But we do see that that they are distracting, right? When we experience that personally, and we see in the research even from back in 2013 that there's evidence that students are being people and students are being distracted. It does also it can encourage, like when you ban phones, you do actually get more face-to-face interaction with students. There is some evidence that points to that. But there are concerns about, limiting digital literacy and learning opportunities by taking phones away from students. It is almost like an appendage for most people these days. So suddenly to not have it, it's challenging to sort of think about how we would not have it. And many of us, when we forget our phones in the car, literally will go back home and get them, right? So there are certainly some challenges and equity concerns. It's difficult to enforce bans, is what we're finding in the literature. Some of you may have seen some of the popular press lately. Even one of our neighbor districts one of our partner districts is actually in the press about the challenges to sort of, what happens with the pouches, and do kids do other things? Do they put other things in the pouches? So there's a lot of sort of angst that comes with prohibition. So it's not like it's a simple fix. And then, you get into potential issues between students and staff around, banning cell phones. And then lastly, there's a disproportionate impact on low-income students who rely on phones for communication, right? That you sort of take this away, and it can create these situations. I think, with the shooting last week, we became reminded again of the importance of communication between students and families in this day and age, and that folks are concerned about that. So, generally speaking, the literature seems to, like most things, says take a balanced approach, right? Like, allowing students to have phones during non-instructional time seems to be appropriate and seems to give them some of the latitude and freedom and autonomy that they need. Certainly using them for specific educational purposes can be a benefit to students, everything from polling to all kinds of other uses in the classroom. And then lastly, it's taking on leveraging technology responsibly to enhance learning. Like this, as I'm saying, this is a part of our realities now. To take them away during 6 or 7 hours of their day and not actually help them learn how to use them effectively and appropriately is somewhat of a dereliction of duty. I think that the data this is what the research is saying. Some researchers are saying. With that, I'm going to hand it back to Superintendent Booker to kind of finish us off here, kind of with the next steps.
Thank you. So what we would like to move forward with is really to get some more input and more voices around this topic from students, families, and our educators. We've embedded, I think it's 4 additional questions in the Panorama survey this fall. We will be involving student leadership groups. We're going to do a focus group with our student board reps, with staff and parent organizations and DTA. And what we would like to do is come back to the board and present some findings, present some feedback to help the board think about decisions moving forward, whether that might be policy development or really just codifying the policies that we're already seeing at our school sites. But that remains to be seen. I think getting some more voices on this topic from our various stakeholders, I think will be really, really important. But with that, I think we are taking a look at next steps again in the fall, stakeholder engagement, maybe drafting some policy from the board and adopting in the spring. And again, I can't say this enough. I do think it's important that our student board reps, as representatives of our students, educators, and families have an opportunity to think about this, look at some of the research that we're presenting, review some of the policies that we currently have, and give input. So with that, I think I'm handing it back to the board for discussion, answer any questions. And as a reminder, we have two principals from Peninsula High School and San Mateo High School here with us this evening to help answer any questions around their policies and yonder pouches and what they've seen at their school sites as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to President Andrade Zuniga.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Yes, now open it up for board comments. Trustee Griffin, do you have any comments?
Forgive me, you caught me with a cookie in my mouth.
Sorry.
I had my hand raised.
Oh, I know. I was gonna do the roll, like, you know, in the order of the roll call, because I can't really see you all that well. So
Okay.
just to make sure I don't miss anyone. Trustee
Okay,
Griffin?
well, thank you. I'll
Sorry.
try not to take all Trustee Land's questions, which are probably written down on his tablet. So couple of things, and mainly they have to do with the how Yonder's working and you know, in terms of the cost and the implementation issues and how you think it works on your campuses right now. So
Hi, good evening. San Mateo has been cell phone free since 2019. So for us, it's kind of like old hat. I believe our community, for some families, they choose San Mateo because we are cell phone free. In terms of cell phones, are kept in the hands of our students because of Yonder, so we don't take them away from students, so they always have access to their cell phone. Teachers do have the ability to unyonder in their classroom for students to do polling, you know, take a picture of a QR code or whatever it might be, and then yonder their phones up again. The cost, our foundation raises money to pay for Yonders for every student. Every student has been given a new Yonder every year. And they keep them throughout their years. Some don't last that long because they either are so anxious about getting to their phone, breaking them, pins get broken or bent, so that it makes the Yonder not stay fully closed. We've seen everything from, you know, burner phones placed in Yonder pouches, granola bars, calculators, potatoes, other things. But typically, you know, because all of our students are Yondered during instructional time, from the time they get onto campus until they leave, it sticks out a lot. If you were like looking down on your phone, you know, we're able to spot it pretty quickly. During non-instructional time, like brunch and lunch, students are Yondered, so they are walking around looking at each other instead of like heads down, walking through the hallways, being able to see students' eyes and, you know, be able to, you know, make eye contact and, you know, talk to students. Hallways are pretty loud because there is talking. And I do remember a time when students, you know, at brunch and lunch would be sitting in a circle and they're texting each other across, you know, their circle instead of actually speaking to one another. A question that comes up a lot is about student safety. Every classroom does have a magnet in their classroom. I would say that if we were in an emergency situation, we would want students to be getting direction from the adult in the classroom instead of worried about contacting their family and not really listening to what is going on. And then at the appropriate time, all students can unyonder, let their, you know, families know everything is okay. We currently also, students can come to the main office, and if they have an important phone call to take, a therapist appointment, they're expecting a call because a family member is in the hospital, we will allow them to yonder, give them some privacy so that they have access to their phones, and then they yonder back up, and then they go back to classrooms. I'm not sure if there were other questions, but it's pretty, smooth, like students know. They come in, they can report to student services to let us know if they've forgotten their yonder pouch or their phone at home, so that we print out a pass for them. So when teachers are in classrooms, they do a yonder check. A student already has taken care of their business before the classroom. So there is very little disruption to instructional time. Last spring we, were experiencing like teachers not doing as many yonder checks. And so we did a survey with our teachers. And I think it was the first time that 100% of the staff at San Mateo agreed to keep yonder. There was nobody that said, I think we're fine without it. And so I think it's very rare when you have 100% of your faculty behind a school policy or rule. And so for San Mateo, like I said, we've been doing it since 2019. So we've kind of worked out a lot of kinks and have done a lot of work with other schools, asking questions about what we do and how we deal with issues that come up. And, every year we're kind of refining and getting better at it. I do know, in terms of the discipline data, cell phone violation, either for breaking their yonder pouch or, we find kids in the restroom, like on their phones. There are consequences. Parents are fine with it. Usually a second violation will require a parent pickup. And sometimes parents, as a consequence, will leave a cell phone at school over the weekend instead of taking it home, because they know their student will probably search the home high and low to get that phone back. So it prevents, a home getting ransacked because they want to have their phone back. There was one other thing I was going to say, and it kind of escaped me at the time, but it works for San Mateo. I realize that it's probably not for everyone, but students hate it, but at the same time realize that it is important to, be aware in the moment, being able to talk to one another without everything kind of being on the phone. I just remembered what I wanted to say. In terms of students on campus, when we have rallies and other things going on where it requires student participation, I think students are eager to join in and be silly because they don't have the fear of someone whipping out their cell phone and filming them being, silly or participating in an activity and then posting it online and making rude, comments. So there's some freedom in terms of kids just being, kids and being goofy and participating in different rally games without that fear of, being made fun of or, videotaped and memes being shown at a later date.
Ms.
Are there
Shu,
any
can you
questions?
remind
Yes.
us the annual cost approximately of yonders?
I think one for every student. I think the cost was about $15,000. I think San Mateo, we kind of get a little bit of a discount because we have, implemented and have had it so long and have worked with other school districts that have done yonder. And so this past year, the pricing was a little different because there's a new pricing structure and CEO at yonder.
Can I just, before you go,
Mhm.
I think one of the things that really impressed me about your history is the implementation. And I think, I've seen in the news and I've seen other schools fail miserably trying to get Yonder up and running. But what I do know is I want you to go back in time and talk about the implementation, because I think that is a lesson for other schools, because it was a process. And if you could share that, because I think it's valuable to other high schools that might want to try it, or even middle schools.
Sure. I think with any, new rule, policy, or anything that's coming up, when it's a grassroots effort and it comes kind of within, especially getting teacher buy-in, that teachers are brought in at the first thing, whether or not it's piloting. I believe at San Mateo, we had heard, I think it was San Leandro High School, had implemented Yonder. And so some of our teachers were interested in going to visit. And so we encouraged them to visit and bring back information to our staff. So they presented it. We reached out to Yonder. We decided to do a pilot with probably about a dozen teachers just yondering within their own classroom. And then other teachers doing kind of the phone caddy or a shoe organizer, like, and the difference was with a Yonder, we're not taking the phones away from the students, they're keeping them in their own possession, versus a student having to put their phone in a caddy and it being, away from them. When we take things from students, we also become responsible for making sure they get returned. And sometimes wrong phones went to the wrong, students, or students would accidentally pick up the wrong phone, and then we're chasing down the student to find out. And so after the pilot, teachers said, hey, we want to really look into this. And so we started with our parent community and did a lot of outreach to parents, because there was that concern of, how do I get in touch with my student? What if there's a school emergency? What if, a lot of what ifs. And so we did a number of parent town hall meetings where we were answering all of those questions, with the support of Yonder, coming out and answering questions and sharing, articles. And so, after the parents' family questions were answered, we did the rollout of Yonder.
Thank you.
Trustee Chavez?
Oh, thank you. I had a lot of questions but now you've answered them all. You've answered all my questions and concerns. Thank you for all the information. I'll just ask a couple of things, but I had a whole list, but you went above and beyond. So thank you so much for explaining for walking us through since 1919, since 2019. Look at my.
None of us are that old.
No, since 2019. So you mentioned your wonderful foundation paid for the cost. I know there would be an upfront cost as well as an annual amount just to keep every pouch needs to be kept active annually. Is that right? So that's an annual license? Is that
Yes, contract. We've done like 2-year contracts, 1-year contracts. Because this past year it was a new CEO. We did a 1-year contract with them. All students get their first Yonder, but if they damage it, just like with textbooks and, their Chromebooks, they pay a $25 replacement fee. I believe Mount Diablo and the other high school that implemented charges $50 replacement. But we do 25. Also, if students' pouches from the year prior are in good condition and they bring it to us, we allow them to use, an older model, so to speak, as their replacement instead of having to pay the $25 fee.
Thank you. You're just a wealth of information and very positive about this. So it's a student, ideally, when they enroll in 9th grade, they're going to keep the same Yonder pouch, and when they graduate, they'll turn it back in for the next set of students. So, but I know we replace.
Yeah, actually, when they turn it in, Yonder comes and picks them up. And so I'm not sure if they do a recycling type of thing or they, test them out to see, you know, kind of strength or materials or whatnot, but they do collect them back.
Thank you. And then one final comment, or question, I guess. I didn't realize how easy it is for the teacher. So if a student has, say, a 20-minute appointment with their medical provider or any appointment that's, you know, legitimate, right?
Yeah.
They'll just either ask the teacher or the front office and it's easy to unlock it.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
We do have a couple of students that have medical conditions where they need to monitor diabetes or other things. And so they have consideration cards. And so, you know, they, you know, sometimes will have their phones like unyondered because they have to do frequent checks. But none of those students have ever been reported to abusing their privileges of having access to their phones.
Thank you for all the information and your presentation.
Absolutely. Any other
Trustee
questions? Yes.
Jacobson? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
So I want to ask about the burden on teachers, and something was said about the more you pay attention to it, the more you have to police it or something. I think it was Dr. Kemke or so what's the difference in burden on teachers versus policing students' phone use without Yonder versus with Yonder? Like basically you're policing the kids with their phone use versus abusing the Yonder pouch, right? Is there a differential?
So I can only speak like in terms of burden to teachers. Most teachers will do Yonder checks as they're, you know, doing a homework check. So, you know, students know Yonder pouches on your desk. They go around and walk around just like making sure they're locked. If they come across a student who's like, you know, okay, that looks questionable or kind of the shape or whatever, it's like, hey, can you Yonder? Let me like take a look, you know, that type of thing. So for teachers, I don't think they consider a burden because I think the good outweighs the time that they have to do the check. If a student doesn't have their, you know, Yonder, they'll get sent down to the office to go get their slip so that for other classes, they'll have their slip so that we know no phone or no Yonder pouch that day. Students also can turn in their phones and they'll get a slip, you know, that, oh, I forgot my Yonder pouch without consequence. However, if they forget it on a regular basis, we start assigning detentions like, okay, should be a regular part of your school materials. You know, you should bring it every day, just like your Chromebook. Otherwise you know, miss out on, you know, certain things or, you know, we consider it as a necessary material. You know, so I think like the only like burden would be, you know, teachers checking and then having to take a break to kind of write a pass to send the student to the office, you know, so they might be missing a couple of minutes of instructional time before they come back. No Yonder pouch. I think on the plus side, teachers really don't have to worry about students cheating during exam, texting each other, taking pictures of exams and sharing it to other classes, just because, you know, they might require your Yonder pouch being on your desk at, you know, all times. And so they've done a Yonder check and they know that. So in terms of, you know, policing, that's as far as it goes for teachers' responsibility of doing Yonder checks to make sure that students have it, their phone is locked up. Administration will deal with, you know, students who might be in the bathroom using, you know, their cell phone.
Yeah. Oh, I had a few more, if that's all right. Have you noticed, I mean, I didn't get the sense that there's any hard data on this, but do you have any observational or soft data about students' mental health, if this is helping?
Unfortunately, we didn't collect that information, but I think, you know, students will say that they do have fewer distractions, like, you know, the notifications, you know, that there's that constant fear of missing out. So because they don't have access to their phones, they really don't know like what's going on. And I think after our first year of Yonder, students started realizing like at the end of the day when they're unyondered and they just see like all of these like notifications that it's just like, okay, that wasn't really important, or like, it's kind of like no big deal. That
Yeah.
it's not something that's going to like take their attention away from being in a classroom and engaged in learning, that like, oh my gosh, like, this person, said this about me or posted this picture, or, is arranging a fight that's going to happen after school. Like, it's just like, okay, it doesn't concern me. I don't really need to know about it. I'm not really missing out. It's not a big deal. I think we deal a lot less with like, the online bullying because students don't have access to their phones, or like,
Right.
look what she said about me. We get that occasionally, like over the weekend, after school hours, but during school hours, like we don't have that issue to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
Can I just add to what
Okay.
she was
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah.
So a few years ago, I was at the graduation for San Mateo, and I think it was I think 1 or 2 years in,
Mhm.
and the speakers, the kids, the student speakers, the senior speakers were talking about this and how they got back in touch with friends. And I was very moved by several speeches because they were really talking about how they reconnected and how they feel more genuinely real at the school, and brought up several of the points and so I was moved by it. I was not expecting it at all. And it was very impressive to hear from students that they thought it was a great thing, even though they knew they were like, I hated it, but I did it. And, it was really quite amazing. In fact, I just got to add this one story. So just the other day, I was at Starbucks in Burlingame, and there's a guy there that went to San Mateo High School. He graduated. He's at UC Davis right now. He works part-time only during the summer. And he's like, you're a principal? I'm like, yeah. And so we started talking about San Mateo and Miss Chu, and he was part of the original volunteer pilot group. And he was like, same thing. It was like, yeah, no, it was an important thing. And while I was there the whole time, it was like really good reason why I did it. And I would see why we did it. And so I just had to add that because
Yeah.
that added to my story with what we
And it's
talked
face
about.
to face time that the
Yeah,
students were.
it was,
Yeah.
it had an impact, is what I would say.
Yeah.
I would say, especially after COVID, where, we were on our devices like all the time, and that,
Right.
that's the only way students could communicate. That, it's like the breakaway from that when we came back, it's like, okay, everybody, wanted us to be back in schools because students needed to be with one another. And so removing that so that they could have that actual FaceTime instead of like, using that phone, like I think made that transition a lot easier, and, students appreciated, that time.
Makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
My last question is about partner districts. So I know that San Mateo Foster City implemented this 1 or 2 years ago. Are you noticing any, like, is it easier for incoming freshmen who are already used to the system? Is it easier?
I think so. Like
Adoption?
this past year, I think was kind of like the first full year where I think, students from a couple of the schools, because I think there was like only 1 or 2 that might have done it,
Oh,
but
okay.
now like kind of like all the middle schools. And
Mhm.
so students were already aware, whether or not they had the kind of same, yonder checks, like consistent with all teachers, and learning about yonder like passes and kind of the disciplinary, consequence if you don't have your pass, as well as all the exceptions. I think, for those students, it was like, okay, yonder, no big deal. So there weren't as many of like, oh, why did we do this? And,
Yeah. Yeah.
ways to get around it, I think it's just kind of a natural, thing. That's an expectation.
Good. Thanks.
Any other questions from any other trustees?
Anything?
I just had one quick question. I was wondering, at the end of the school day, is there like a magic wand that all of a sudden all the yonder pouches are unlocked, or do the
Teachers like
teachers
will like,
go around? Okay.
stand by their door,
Right.
and then students
there you
just
go.
on yonder
Nice.
as they like.
have a nice
through.
day, you're
Yeah.
unlocked. Right.
And there are like students that forget and come back at 4 or 5 o'clock.
See.
It's like, I forgot to on yonder,
Right.
and then we'll,
Makes
on
sense.
yonder. And then those that won't come back to school and break it open because they have to, and then we have to give them a new one.
Yeah.
But Yeah,
Makes
at the
sense.
end of the day,
Yeah.
like, you will like, there's a market difference, like at the end of the day, when students are leaving, it's like their phones and they're like heading out the
Right.
door.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I actually have some questions related to the mental health data. I wonder if we could maybe even get some information off of some of the mental health questionnaires and information we already get related to school to school. Maybe some of that information can tell us, I don't know, maybe it's related to using Yonder or not, like mental health issues on school campuses. I don't know, maybe something like that. But thank you for your, for all the information about how you implemented the Yonder program and things like that. But I want to know from Principal Campana, since it's a little newer, how did you implement, sorry, how did you implement the Yonder program at your school, and how receptive have the students been? And what are maybe give us some successes and some challenges.
Okay. It's a lot. I'm gonna try to remember all your questions.
Sorry.
So if I don't get to all of them, just let me know. So, basically 4 years ago, our teachers kind of took the initiative of noticing it was challenging to work with the kids and just a lot of factors. And on our campus, the kids were using it to communicate with each other, but not necessarily in a good way, just during the day. And so it was becoming distracting to the learning. And so we talked about it. It was just kind of the teachers asked for, is there a way we could do something related to the phones? And so at the time, I knew two people that were using it. And one was in San Leandro, Allison Silvestri, who actually used to work at San Mateo High School years ago. She was the principal there. And so they had done it. And I also knew that Yvonne had done it. And so I was fortunate enough at the time, and I took a couple of teachers years ago, and Yvonne doesn't remember this. It's like, can we come by and just kind of take a look? And she said, yeah, no problem. And one of the biggest thing I noticed right away was the volume at lunch and brunch of kids just talking more to each other as opposed to being on their phones in these rows. And so I thought that was a huge thing. And so the teachers were like, can we try to do this? So for us, we don't have a foundation, but we decided to invest within our site funds towards this project and venture. So we spent the first year to get it off the ground, it was $4,000. And in that $4,000, it was both for the pouches and also coming up with a plan, working with Yonder. And then also they came out several times to kind of help us implement it because we knew it would be a big resistance from the students. And we also did part of their relationship at the time was helping us have meetings with families. So kind of discussing how this process would work. So that was the beginning of it. And so in that first year, every kid was given a pouch and they were able to keep it. And we were getting probably about 25% of the pouches broken. And so it was just like they're getting damaged and kids couldn't deal with it. And then the deal was if the pouch got damaged, they're required to put it in a pouch, but in our office. And so they didn't get to keep the second one. Because for us, while we'd like to say, hey, if you break the pouch, the next one you got to pay $20-25. It's a lot to ask for some of our families. So we didn't think that was a viable solution. And so that's kind of what we did. And then so second year, we switched over to that basically students would put their phones in a pouch. And so, they put it in the pouch and the pouch has to stay in the office. So they didn't get to keep the pouch with them. But the idea there was, we kept the phones, and if they needed it during the day, they could come down and use it. And so the idea was to separate going to class and having that structure here. And so, we tell them like, hey, you can come to the principal's office and use the phone. But the bottom line is a lot of them don't do it. And so like, we'll give them their space. And so I would say on the average, when I make that, and last year, I think there was a total of maybe 15 kids who came out and did that. So that wasn't a huge thing. And then the other question always comes out of all this is like, what do you do when there's an emergency? And so ironically, we're a much smaller school, so you have to look at it totally different than a school like San Mateo. So last year we had a power line that went down, and I know Superintendent Booker happened to be over there in the morning. And so, we have, in the morning, we don't get quite as many students. We had about 100 kids, and in a span of about 3 to 5 minutes, we were able to get all the phones back to them. So it wasn't a huge process in that. But, the challenge we run into every year, the good news is I find when we get new kids from San Mateo already know the process. So they're like, this is nothing new. But I'm also finding the kids from the other schools know that this is what we do. I think the challenge is those kids trying to be one step ahead of us on kind of what they do. And so, for example, they'll turn in their phone, but then they got the earpiece in, and there's a way they can activate their phone from the earpiece. And so you have to be constantly thinking about it. And so currently, as we speak, there's a message going out to families tonight reminding kids they're not allowed to have their earpieces because that's also a way to kind of communicate. So they're happy to turn their phone. But at the end of the day, really to kind of bring this together, for us, it's about separating, getting our students back to focusing on academics and putting this phone separate from there and just in the class time to really concentrate. And so right now where we're at, we do use Yonder. We pay $2,000 a year for the pouches. We usually end up with an excess of pouches at the end of the year because now we keep them. So we don't really need the pouches renewed because they can't take them and damage them. We keep them with us. But kids will still try to hold on to the phones. And so the other part is, last year we saw a lot of burner phones. And so we probably collected in the course of a year about 40 burner phones. And so, of course, they never come back for them at the end of the year because they're old phones and so forth. We didn't get any potatoes or anything in ours, but we did get phones. And so, but those are some of the factors. And so this year, kind of where we're evolving a little bit is we still use the pouches, but we don't make, as long as the phone's not out, we'll let about 40% of our kids turn it in and put it in the pouch. The other 60% are allowed to keep it as long as we don't see it. And so we're kind of in that, because we have a lot of new teachers, they go, when can I use technology with the phones and when does it make sense? And so it's too much to ask our teachers to unlock the pouches every period. We do it at the end of the day. They do it. Students come in the morning, they unlock it, they put it in if they want it, or if they keep it there, we make sure it's turned off. But we also asked all of our parents to sign a form as far as if their student has a phone. And so they had to return it so we know right away if a kid has a phone on them or not. And so we try to keep that updated. But I think the biggest factor for us that I've noticed is the volume, similar to Principal Shu's gone up on the campus where kids are talking more. I would also say, and I don't know if there's an exact correlation, but we've had less instances of fights or scuffles. But one of the things that's really interesting is that when we had a couple of scuffles last year, they never made it to YouTube. They never made it out. And so the reverse side of that is you limit how big something gets. Like I always think of television. If a guy runs on the field or something, they cut away. For us, it's like it's similar in the sense of that, they know that we're looking to see if anybody has a phone because we have staff that's usually out. And so that's been really helpful too. And so the idea of just kind of the protection there, and then getting back to getting the kids to socialize and use it as a form in the class. So we haven't quite figured out how to use the technology within the class, but those are kind of some of the big pieces. I don't know if I answered all your questions, but I tried to give you the quick overview because I know you guys had quite a bit.
No,
Yeah.
you did. Thank you. Wow, you remembered everything.
Okay. All right.
Does anyone else have any questions? Thank you for all that info.
Sure.
I think for me, I'd like to just say some comments, not rather than, because we want some direction and where we're going. I think having the surveys, I was at the last equity advisory, and I thought it was great that we talked about the questions and part of the survey for what was going to go out. I think that's excellent. I think, great, let's do that. I think that's something we really need. I truly believe that one size doesn't fit all. I mean, I wanted to talk about a little balance here. I see the benefits of Yonder. I see as a principal in a middle school what happens, and there's degrees. I think the first degree is the more socialization, where kids are actually not thinking about the phone and are actually thinking about interactions. And I think sometimes we can do that with pouches or just the put them on the wall or put them in your backpack, turn them off, have a very harsh policy where you take it away if you see it kind of thing, which has some, for middle school, is not easy, and, I have in Burlingame a bell-to-bell system where when the first bell rings, it's got to go away, disappear into the backpack, not in the pocket. If it's in the pocket and we see it, we're going to ask to be taken away. And it's not as good as what Yonder has because, like you said, when you have a fight or you have a situation where everybody takes out the video to video, that becomes a huge deal. That is something that is a major problem for schools now. You see it with police in the cities, and it's like something happens and everybody's videotaping, what's going on. I think with Yonder, I think you'd have a lot less of that problem. I definitely see. I also think so I think there's the socialization aspect that really improves. I see that video not coming out. So then there's less fighting, there's less bullying, less online bullying because they don't care as much about what's on the phone. So I think it behooves us to really explore these things. I do want to go back to what I asked Yvonne earlier. Implementing it can be really a plus and a minus. If you don't do it right, there's real detriment because then people rebel against it and say, this is not our civil rights. And rightfully so, because you didn't think about piloting it and asking kids to try it out and see what it's like. And I think that grassroots kind of philosophy is important no matter what we do, so that it is, hey, how are we going to try something? What are we going to do? How does it work? And give it a try. So wherever we land, I think we need to have each school be unique with a solution, but give kind of avenues and possibilities of what those avenues could be. Like Yonder, I think should definitely be a possibility for all schools, and we should be able to support that. But by the same token, it doesn't have to be everybody doing Yonder. And so anyway, I just want to give my kind of thinking of where we're going, but I really like where we're headed. I like the research. I really appreciate the two schools coming in. I think we have a good base, and Dr. Simmons, thanks for, kind of laying the groundwork. I think we have a good where we're going, and that's kind of where I'm at. Thank you.
Okay, if there are any other comments yes, Trustee Jacobson.
Thanks. I think those were a lot of good comments, Trustee Land. I appreciate your perspective as a middle school principal. I think to your point about implementation, what we have on our side now is we have a state law, and this is going to be, uniform, not uniform in the sense of what it looks like at every school, but this is the baseline expectation at every school. And like I said, when we have partner districts who are already doing it, it's going to make that implementation that much easier going forward. And to that end, I think that in our stakeholder engagement, I think we need to consider reaching out to our partner districts and including them in that feedback system. Because the middle school families, it's their kids that this is going to affect. And it's also their kids who also have experience with it. I just think that that's a segment that we need to include.
Good points.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Okay, are there any other comments from anybody else?
Did you want to
add anything? Yeah, I think the last thing I would just say that you both kind of touched on it. Culturally speaking, you really have to get your community involved, and each community is going to look different. And so I think what's good here tonight is that based on our schools are completely different in the size. And so you have to consider those factors and how you're going to do it. And like I said, we're evolving, and I'm sure they are too, of how we do it. But at the end of the day, the kids are adjusting. The only thing I would say that's interesting is if you do a survey at my site right now, remember I get 65% new students every year. The results are going to look different if you ask me in the fall versus you ask me in the spring, because now they've had it for 6 months. You ask most of these kids that are new now, you're going to get a completely different response. But the resistance is not what it used to be. So I just wanted to add that in there. So thank you.
That's a good point, and that's what I was thinking as well, is the pre or the early on, and then the at the end of the year surveys. Have any of the sites, either Principal Shu or Principal Campana, have you done those types of surveys, and what have you seen as the outcome?
Last year when we did our staff survey, we also did a student survey. And so it was interesting that there were some student, comments that were positive, that they understood the reason and that they had, less, FOMO because they just didn't have access. Students will complain, but they understand, it's kind of like, they don't want to take their medicine, but it's going to make them feel better. And so like, I think initially it's like, why do we have this? And you explain the reasons. Okay, I get it. That I think for most teenagers, like they want to rebel against, the rules of like, why are you making us do this? But then when you explain to them, it's just like, you always have access. So in an emergency, there's no reason to, worry about not being able to contact your family. And, they do have their Chromebook, so they can still G-chat their friends. So we haven't totally eliminated, all of that. So there are other means of using technology, in the classroom that doesn't totally, cut them off from, this appendage now that they have, like in their phone. So, I think they get used to it at first, like you do the back to school survey, they're going to feel a little differently until they kind of get used to it. And then it just becomes, part of their everyday life. But we did do the survey and, there were some pretty insightful, comments coming from students that they probably would not readily admit in front of their peers because they want their phones.
Right. And even just the like answers between the parents, the teachers, and then the students, how do all of those answers, what are the similarities? What are the differences? Even like demographically, in each community, what is also the attitude towards, maybe towards it without using it, and then post having this program there. Yeah, that's all really interesting information. Out of all of that, has there been like, does any of that stick out to you off the top of your head?
I know that families do struggle with cell phone use at home. There are families that turn off their Wi-Fi. And what's interesting is like students, have come to school and asked for a hotspot. And so the family might turn off the Wi-Fi, but then the student brought home a hotspot and they're still on it. And so, when they report that to us, we confiscate like the hotspot because then we want to support families. We have had families ask whether or not we rent Yonder magnets, so they can have one at home and have their students Yonder at home. And so, I think families are struggling with cell phone usage at home and making sure, when students go to bed, they are like going to bed and not like on their phone, despite, I've heard families, they need to leave it here, but then in the middle of the night, parents fall asleep, the kid grabs the phone and is using it. So, I think the struggle, they understand the struggle. And so if they can get their student off their cell phone for, 7 hours a day, they'll take it.
Thank you.
We largely go based on the panoramic survey because we don't. And so part of that is a key factor is looking at the questions about how safe do you feel at school? And a lot of times you got to read between the lines of what's the information the student describes, but a lot of it is talked about just the cell phone and kind of the use there. And so I think it's really important. The one last thing I wanted to kind of bring up related to just the whole process is modeling. I really get on my staff about having their phone out in the quad when we're asking the kids not to have it. And I think they struggle still. So I always say it's like they love it, but I also go, you got to model it. And so like I will never bring my phone out there. And I've told them if the only time you'll see it is if it's an emergency. And thankfully we don't have those very often. But the point is that I think that's a key component when you look at this is that staff being on board, you can't be out in the open spaces and have it out or it just sends the wrong message. So thank you.
Yeah, no, you have a point, even with families, right? As parents, we say, get off the phone, but we're sitting there with the phone. And the panoramic survey, that's what I was kind of getting at with mental health data from school to school, and then what the answers are related to all of this stuff. So thank you. Are there any other questions before we switch over to public comment?
I just wanted to briefly say one more comment to say thank you both two of our amazing principals and also Mr. Simmons for presenting and just explaining everything. And I can clearly see there's a lot of benefits that outweigh the cost. And I know Trustee Andrade Zuniga was mentioning about mental health. I had two daughters go through one of our high schools, Cappuccino, and I saw video clips of this happened and that happened. And you can tell this, I mean, students would pull out their phones because they wanted to be on camera, and they wanted to show something that's negative, right? Fights or whatnot. So I do think, and there's also the whole social, emotional aspect of it. So I clearly see the benefits. So thank you for everything you guys have presented tonight. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we can switch gears now to public comment. Ms. Aquino, do we have anyone in person?
There are no requests.
Thank you. How about online?
Hold on, there is one request for public comment I'm seeing.
Okay, thank you.
This is for cell phone use. Yeah.
This is on a related subject, but a different application. We threw a party for high schoolers, juniors, and as they came in, everybody deposited their cell phone. And on the way out, we asked all of them, especially the girls, did you enjoy it? Would you have it? Without a doubt, we had no complaints, 0 complaints. In fact, some of the comments were, I never talked to that girl before. I never knew these people, and there was no wallflowers. Everybody was dancing, enjoying themselves and communicating with each other, talking and having little groups and dancing. The outbreak of it was there was absolutely 0 social postings. We had none. So it was actually, and then for the next time, there was nobody that refused to come because they had to give up their cell phone. So I think that sometimes the technology kind of gets in the way of the human interaction. So I think you guys are in the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, if there are no other comments, I will go to the next item. Thank you very much for this really great information. Going on to construction, I see that there is none. Division of Human Resources, Personnel Consent Agenda. Dr. Black.
Yes, we have the personnel actions. We have the confidentials board agenda with the personnel actions.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, how about any questions or comments from the public? Anybody in person?
There are none.
Anybody online?
There are none.
Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Jacobson, second by Trustee Land. I will take a roll call. Trustee Griffin.
Yes.
Trustee Chavez.
Yes.
Trustee Jacobson.
Aye.
Trustee Land.
Yes.
And I also agree, aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, going on to the next item. Again, Dr. Black.
Yes, thank you. The first item on the HR agenda is the personnel actions addendum, and I have 2 recognitions, if I may. And these are long-standing teachers who will be retiring at the end of this school year. They announced their retirement early. The first one is Sharon Blevis, special education teacher and department chair at Burlingame High School. She's been in the district for 41 years.
Wow.
The next one is another special education teacher, Jewel Wally. She's at Cappuccino, and she's been in the district for 31 years. And those are the recognitions.
Thank you. Okay, are there any comments from the board? Okay, seeing that there are none. Any questions or comments from the public?
There are none.
Sorry, in person and virtual, right?
They're correct. There are none.
Thank you. Okay, I can take a motion.
I make a motion to approve the personnel actions addendum.
I second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Land, second by Trustee Jacobson. I will take a roll call. Trustee Griffin.
Aye.
Trustee Chavez.
Aye.
Trustee Jacobson.
Aye.
Trustee Land.
Aye.
And aye from me as well. Okay, motion carries. All right, approval of the memorandum of understanding.
Yes, this is a memorandum. Oh, sorry, this is a memorandum of understanding for supervision of one of our teachers who's also who uses art therapy and is also gaining her mental health therapy license. If this is approved and she succeeds in her endeavors here, we will be the first newcomer school to officially use art therapy. So the district recommends approval of this MOU.
Are there any comments from the board? I have to say that I've seen this class in action and it's pretty amazing. It's so important for the students to be able to express themselves through any sort of art form. So this is great. Are there any questions or comments from the public?
There are none in person or virtual.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion by trustee Land, second by trustee Chavez. All in, sorry, roll call vote. Trustee Griffin,
Aye.
trustee Chavez,
Aye.
trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
trustee Land,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Number 3, Dr. Black.
Yes, our adult school, or I'm sorry, our San Mateo Adult Career and Education Program has been holding ESL classes up in San Bruno in San Bruno Park, and we are going to expand them. And the San Bruno Park District has agreed to help pay for the funding of that expansion at Bel Air Elementary. And this MOU is, or this agreement is reducing that to writing. And we recommend approval of this agreement.
Thank you. Yeah, this is another really valuable program. It's always good to go to people to receive different services. So this is excellent. Any comments or questions from the board?
Yes, if I could, I would just like to make a comment that I live in San Bruno and this is a tremendous way to support our community. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for the partnership.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo the same thing. I think it's great that we're kind of trying to expand so that people who can't get to one area of town or one area of the peninsula but can go to the other, it would make it happen. So that's great. I really like that. We have our area is quite large and it's nice to expand to different areas and different places to go.
Yeah, thank you. All right, any questions or comments from the public?
There are none in person or virtual.
Okay, can I have a motion?
I'd like to make the motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, motion by trustee Chavez, second by trustee Land. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee Chavez,
Aye.
trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
trustee Land,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Approval for the updated request to pay event staff variable.
Yes, we have a request to pay event variable salary schedule, and in order to be more comprehensive in our services at these events, we have revised this to include other sports in the different positions. We do this, we kind of tinker with it every year. Hope maybe this will be the last one, but we do recommend approval of this variable pay event staff variable salary schedule.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? I have a question. So since the last time we approved this, what has there been any changes? How, I don't know, any other concerns, anything like that?
Yes, we've added different positions to a number of sports that were only relegated to football and basketball. So now we have the I think it's ticket taker and one other optional position to those events, maybe a timer. That they will now be paid unless, parents can still volunteer. It's their option. And a lot of parents do. They don't put in a variable, but this is more for staff.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, any questions or comments from the public?
There are none virtually or in person.
Okay, I could take a motion.
So moved.
I second.
Okay, so we have a motion by trustee Land and a second by trustee Jacobson. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee Chavez,
Aye.
trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
trustee Land,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, approval of classified manager position.
Go ahead.
We're very excited to bring forth the position of Director of Facilities and Construction for the board's consideration. The board has authorized many Measure L projects as well as deferred maintenance, RDA, and is considering some projects under the proceeds of the sale of Crestmore. So this position will lead the Capital Facilities Department as we move forward into the next set of very significant projects that the board will hopefully be authorizing. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Go for it.
I have a question. I can't find my hand to raise it on the thing and I can't. I have a quick question. With regard to the source of funding is Fund 21. What is Fund 21 for?
So Fund 21 is the district's building fund, but it includes different sources. So one of those sources obviously is the $385 million Measure L, but that is not where this position is funded. We are lucky to have additional funding, some of it coming from pass-through dollars of local RDAs. And so this position, and actually all of the positions in our Capital Facilities Department, are funded through these RDA dollars. And it also makes it cleaner for our Measure L expenditures, because while salary and benefits are an allowable expenditure in Measure L, you need to be really careful in terms of what projects those folks are working on. And you really need to be able to document that really well. With this ability, we're able to fund with different facilities funding, which keeps those completely out of the bond. And so it doesn't commingle those at all. So
I couldn't have said it better myself.
thank you, Trustee Griffin.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, any questions or comments from the public?
None in person or virtually.
Great, thank you. Okay, can I get a motion?
I'd like the motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion by trustee Chavez, second by trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee Chavez,
Aye.
trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
trustee Land.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion passes. Approval of the revised 24 to 25 administrator manager salary schedule.
Yes, this is a revision to include the previous item approval, the job description on the salary schedule. We did a salary comparison and feel that the level 8 is the appropriate placement for this position. So we recommend approval of the revised administrative manager salary schedule.
Great. Okay, are there any questions or comments from the board? Okay, questions or comments from the public?
There are none.
Okay, I would like a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Land and a second by trustee Griffin. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee Chavez,
Aye.
trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
trustee Land.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion passes. Okay, Division of Student Services. Superintendent Booker, are there any items for student services?
Not this evening, thank you.
Okay. Going on to Division of Instructional Services. Anything on this item?
Also not this evening.
Okay. Division of Business Services, Mr. Hawkins.
Yes, tonight we have the unaudited actuals for 2023, 2024. And I'll wait a second as we pop up the presentation. All right, as that's coming up, I want to thank Valerie Miller and Vanessa Castano and the entire fiscal team. I say it most times that I come up here. Their team does 99.9% of the work. And I'm blessed to work with such a great team that really does all the heavy lifting here. And I just get to be the one to bring forth the budget and the results. And so thank you. This time of year, we're at unaudited actuals. By September 15th of each year, the board is required to consider and approve the unaudited actuals, which are the final financials from the previous year ended June 30th. And for us, that's June 30th, 2024. I'll go over the estimated and unaudited actuals. So estimated actuals were at the budget adoption time, where we said this is how we believe we will close the year. Our unaudited actuals are how we actually close the year. We'll talk about ending balance trends over the last 5 years, go into a little bit on program carryover, and talk about next steps as we monitor the budget for 24, 25 and beyond. In terms of our estimated actuals versus our unaudited actuals, they're very similar with the exception of unspent categoricals on the restricted side, and then carryover on the unrestricted side of the site. And we'll hit carryover here in a minute. In terms of our ending fund balance trend, our unrestricted ending fund balance is 18.9%. As you look over the last 4 years after the first year of COVID, that tracks very well within 2% each year there. On the restricted side, as we've talked a lot, and we've talked about the step down, and we've talked about the COVID funding that has come in and other funding from the state, the restricted ending fund balance represents those balances which are scheduled to be spent primarily over the next 3 years. In terms of our overall carryover, I noted there is program carryover at the sites. That's about $1.1 million. I do want to, I'm sorry, I apologize on the formatting. It seems to have come differently on the slide. But $1.1 million at the site. I want to identify that actually is down from year to year by about $200,000. So I commend our sites for using up some of those dollars as we move forward. In terms of program carryover, this is the amount on restricted carryover. These are those categorical balances from the feds and the state. Just a couple to hit. We have the lottery instructional materials, which is the state funding that supports our instructional materials and adoptions. The arts, music, and instructional materials block grant, which does similar, but also has made significant investments in our arts and music program over the last few years. The arts and music in school, that is Prop 28. The Child Nutrition Kit and Infrastructure and Training funding, which will be used to improve our kitchens. The California Learning and Community School Success, which funds our social workers to improve student attendance. The A to G grant and the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant, which is the state COVID funding. In terms of next steps, what are we going to do? So we'll continue to manage those one-time funds, which, like I said, we have plans over approximately the next 3 years to spend a vast majority of those down. We will monitor our levy letter, which is our taxes including the P1, P2, and annual property tax projections, and give the board an update at first and second interim for that. We will monitor enrollment, especially as we get into CalPAD's time. We've finalized negotiations with DTA, and we look forward to finalizing with our other labor partners. I believe we should be seeing the AB 1200 financial impact from the tentative agreement with DTA at the September 26th board meeting. We'll monitor staffing, although it is pretty much in line with what we expected at budget adoption with some small changes. And then we'll monitor special education funding, enrollment, NPA and MPS costs and settlements as we move forward into first interim. So with that, I am happy to open it up to questions.
Are there any questions or comments from the board? I can't see hands, so.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, President Andrade Zuniga. I'll speak for just a moment. This is Terry. I don't know how I said my name. Mr. Hawkins, I want to assure you that the layout for those two slides is correct on our handout, as well as the online agenda attachment. So I want to reassure you that it looks great.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that. I
sure.
appreciate
And
that.
the online, for those watching the online version on the agenda, looks perfect as well. I wanted to thank you and your staff for putting this together, because as I know from my job, every spreadsheet that's a summary, there's multiple Excel spreadsheets, schedules behind it, and it's a lot of work. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you and your entire staff. I see you guys out there for putting this together. My only question or observation is one of my favorite topics is the percentage, the balance ending percentage. So I noticed we're on an upward trend a little bit. It's 18.9%. Do you foresee that? Is that what we expected to have a little bit of an upward trend for the percentage of fund balance ending? Just was curious.
Yeah, we see a little small increases in percentage, some small decreases in percentage year to year. Last year we were actually down a little bit from 19.8 to 18%.
Correct.
And then we bumped up a little bit to 18.9%. I think we're in a really good financial position, to make decisions. We've got those one-time funds that are we'll be spending over the next 3 years, which will continue to put some pressures in terms of some of the things that they're funding. And as we look for other potential funding sources and we step down those, I think we're in a really good financial position to make decisions. And especially given this interest rate environment, I think we're in a very strong financial position to move forward.
Great. Thank you.
Is there anyone else with any questions or comments?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So Yancy, on estimated the estimated unaudited actuals page. So I'm used to the fact that estimated to unaudited always goes up.
Correct.
But what I'm noticing is in our increase, so we've got quite a boost, because we were thinking we were going to be negative 2,400,000, and now we have an increase of 4.1 million. So I know we were talking earlier about budget issues and things like that, but that's a huge change. Can you explain what was the factors involved and what happened between the estimated to the unaudited?
Absolutely. It's really due to three factors. And so, and the first two have to do with how we budget on things that have been authorized by the board. We budget those to be fully spent. And as we know, on some categorical funds and at some sites that they do not spend that, and those will carry over. So site carryover reflects
So that was like
about 1 million too.
Right.
We have 4 million in unspent categoricals, and those are allocations and funds that the board has already approved under categorical funding. So that's on the restricted side. So we went from about $4 million projected deficit And so those are all the funds that have been approved by the board to be spent and allocated to the departments and the sites. Now, we knew that they likely wouldn't all be spent this year. But they have been approved and allocated by the board. And so we do budget for them to be spent. And so between the two of those, that's about 5 million. The other difference is a little over $1 million. And that really comes from just a couple of revenues that luckily came in a little higher. Unsecured taxes, which, we don't, we get an estimate from the county, and we budget exactly the estimate that the county gives us. But we received a few $100,000 extra unsecured revenue, which was great. I noted the interest rate environment, which, worries us on our secured taxes with our AV growth. But at least our cash is making a little bit more money. So we have a little bit more lease income. And then one shout out to the facility use department, who really knocked it out of the park this year and brought in $2.7 million, which was, I think, 300,000 to 400,000 above the estimate that we had in May. They really increased. So there were a couple things, but the large majority of that, the 1 million and the 4 million, are reflected in allocations that have been made to our sites and departments in either site funds or categorical funds that have been approved. But it's a timing difference in terms of those expenditures.
I just ultimately, I appreciate all the comments and your explanation. That helps me quite a bit. I just want to say thank you. I think balancing our budget is something that you do well, and your team. I'm going to say hi to the Vanessas in the back. There they are. Okay. Because I really feel like we're doing something right. I mean, and I have to say thank you. I think our healthy budget isn't indicative of all districts and the struggling that a lot of districts are going through. So thank you for your fiduciary responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
A question and a comment. I think it's our sound fiscal practices that have guided us through these difficult times. We have not been always at
Spend.
no. Well, no, but I mean, sometimes things are beyond your control. And I do appreciate the work that you and your team do. That last comment from Trustee Land was actually Trustee Friedman's comment eventually, all the time that it just kind of that it would always come back. Question: when are you going to get your audit done?
So by ed code, we will get it done by December 15th. But I will say that our auditors will be here next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, as we look to hopefully, hopefully the board approves our unaudited actuals tonight, and we'll be able to send them over to our auditors. We have a good relationship with our auditors, and so we're excited for them to get in and dig in. They've already completed their interim work, besides a couple items. And so we look forward to finishing up our audit, as well as our audit of our two bond measures that they will do as well.
Do they still ever interview board members?
They do. I think.
I don't need an interview, but they used to interview us, occasionally. But we haven't heard.
I think I hear a volunteer right there.
No,
Right?
I believe they've been usually asking the president for an interview.
Okay.
So.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not the president.
I can defer to Vice President.
No, and actually,
congratulations.
and actually, while we got the whole ship of state stuck in the mud, I will add that we don't get to choose. The auditors ask who they determine, because they ask you questions in terms of the fraud environment and the audit risk. So this is like an auditor thing, but I mean, it's a practice that's gone on. So, and December 15th is when it's due. So we're going to be getting it right there, hot off the press, probably the night before it's due or that night, huh?
No, I expect the audit earlier this year. Last year, we were waiting on the state to approve J13 around, if you remember the storms about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
But we weren't able to finalize until the state actually approved that J13 waiver. We could have put our things incorrectly and finalized without the waiver, but we were not going to do that. So
I don't think Mr. Hawkins has ever missed a deadline.
Okay. I'll make a motion to
Second.
accept.
Did we need to get any public comments?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yes, so any other comments or questions for Mr. Hawkins? Any public, any questions or comments from the public?
There are none.
Okay, so we had a motion by trustee Griffin,
I'll second.
second by trustee Jacobson. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee Chavez,
Aye.
trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
trustee Land,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, second, approval of response to the grand jury report.
all right, thank you. In June, the grand jury released and we received a report on internal controls and some suggestion. On this matter, all the CBOs and superintendents throughout the county met and discussed and came up with a universal response to the grand jury that was agreed upon by the chief business officials and superintendents of the county of San Mateo. And so the attached draft response is presented for your consideration for approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can you highlight for us what was the response?
The response was to thank the grand jury for the recommendations and the thought, and it also was asking the grand jury to consider some other factors that the CBOs and superintendents believed that the grand jury did not necessarily consider around the other internal controls that are in place. In this county, we are all considered fiscally dependent school districts, which means that our payroll and financial systems are with the County Office of Education, and they provide an additional layer of oversight. The report also didn't go into the different work of our auditors and the work and the findings of those auditors in the report. And it was focused on some other areas. So our recommendation was that especially the one one size fits all approach around internal controls didn't necessarily make sense. And so we'll see after the response if the grand jury does some additional work and responds, or they leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, questions or comments from the public?
I'm sorry.
Ms.
I'm
Aquino,
sorry.
are there any questions or comments from the public?
No, sorry.
Thank you. That's okay. All right, I'd like to have a motion.
So move.
Great. Motion by trustee Griffin,
Second.
second by trustee Jacobson. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee Chavez,
Aye.
trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
trustee Land,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Public hearing on authorization to increase developer fees. Mr. Hawkins.
All right. Thank you. Every 2 years, the state of California sets updated rates for school impact or developer fees. In order to officially enact those updated fees, district must do a set of things. The first is perform a justification study to determine if the district is justified in collecting those school impact or developer fees. The second is what we're doing right now is hold a public hearing to get input on those fees. The third is to make appropriate notifications to impacted entities and citizens. So those are the cities and the other school districts around us and anyone who has signed up to get notifications around developer fees. Next, the board would consider and potentially authorize the updated state-approved fees. And then 60 days after the board acts, those fees would be updated and implemented. So tonight, we're here to first update and have the public hearing, and then we'll have another item after that.
Okay, I will now open it up for a public hearing. Okay, are there any questions or comments from the public?
There are none.
Okay, I will now close the public hearing. Okay, adoption of justification study.
All
Mr.
right.
Hawkins.
Thank you. As I noted in our previous item around the public hearing, we're asking the board to adopt the developer fee justification study, which was attached to this and the previous item, and approve the resolution enacting the updated developer fees at the state approved level after a 60-day period.
Great, are there any questions or comments for Mr. Hawkins? Okay, are there any questions or comments from the public?
There are none.
Okay, can I have a motion?
I'll move adoption.
Second.
Okay, motion by trustee Griffin, second by trustee Land. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee
Aye.
Harris,
Aye.
trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
trustee Land,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Okay, approval to file notice of exemption for the acquisition of 870 Hinckley Road.
All righty. This item relates to the proposed project to expand the current Peninsula High School. It is in relation to the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. Staff is making the recommendation to the Board of Trustees to, number one, approve the notice of exemption and authorize its filing pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15062. Two, to approve the acquisition of property subject to any remaining contingency in the purchase and sale agreement. And three, to delegate authority to the superintendent or his designee to file the notice of exemption and to take all action reasonably necessary to give effect to this action item. With that, myself or Sean Absher from Stradling are available for your questions.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from the board with respect to the notice of exemption for the acquisition of 870 Hinckley Road, Burlingame, California, APN 026-310-490, demolition of building and expansion of Peninsula High School, the project and approval of the project? Okay, are there any questions or comments from the public?
Yes, I believe we have a comment card. I'm a little confused because I got some notes. So I think it's going to be Mr. Leininger first, or do I have that mixed up?
That's for the next item.
Okay, that's where I got a little confused. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
So this is for Mr. Turner.
This is, yeah, I'm Mr. Turner.
Thank you.
An attorney, and so thank you. And before I get my time running here, just on a personal note, I'm a parent of two students. I went to Burlingame High School. One graduated in 2018, the other in 2021, and they had great experiences at Burlingame High School, received an excellent education. And so for that, I thank you. I thank you for the schools that you provide for our communities.
Thank you.
what I'm here about. And I also love this cell phone, no cell phones. As does my client here. But why I'm here, I'm Andrew Turner. I'm an attorney and I represent Paul Leininger, who is the owner of 870 Hinckley and also ABX Engineering, which is the tenant at 870 Hinckley. Staff here recommends that the board approve a notice of exemption. Basically, staff is recommending and that this project is categorically exempt from any further CEQA requirements. On behalf of my clients, we request that the board not approve the notice of exemption. I say we step back to 2018. This board decided to condemn the property next door, approximately an acre of property to build a Burlingame High School. I represented those folks also. You condemn the property, you built your high school, and now you're finding that you need apparently an additional acre, to expand the high school that you've built. You're doubling the size of the footprint of the land that you own to have this high school. Yet for the categorical exemption qualification, it's the finding of the staff or the determination that there's going to be no significant traffic increase or people coming to this area because of this expansion on an acre of property. I find it's interesting. You look at the resolution of necessity that was going to be before you on June 20, which was pulled from the calendar about 4 hours before the hearing. And that resolution of necessity, which is what you're to consider to acquire this property, it provided that there's been a 30% increase in the students at Peninsula High School since 2020. It also provided that the need for the project is to meet the needs of Peninsula High School's growing student population. So you're getting bigger. There's more kids coming. You need more space. Now for the resolution of necessity, which you'll be hearing momentarily considering, that's been removed. Why has that been removed? So there's no language in there anymore about the growing student population. There's no language anymore about how the school population has increased by 30% in the last 4 years. That's removed because it's inconsistent with what is required for a categorical exemption, which is that there's not going to be any impact on the traffic, on the environment. That gets you to the categorical exemption. Otherwise, you need an EIR, a negative declaration. Common sense tells us that by taking another acre, putting in 40 new parking spaces, you only have 16 right now. You're not going to bring more people to the area. That doesn't make sense. And I think it's disingenuous to think otherwise or state otherwise. That's the first reason that this should not be considered under a categorical exemption. You need a negative declaration or an EIR. It's not some small project. Secondly, CEQA and Education Code require specific requirements for properties, schools that are within 500 feet of a major freeway. This property is within 420 feet. So this is an instance I would submit that requires extra caution, extra study, and it is not appropriate to deal with the CEQA component of it through a categorical exemption. And I don't understand why the district is doing it. I don't know if it's to save money or it's time, but it's not appropriate. And I would ask on behalf of my clients that the district, the board, not approve the notice of exemption. And lastly, just for the record,
Can
the
you wrap up
administrative.
your comment? Sorry,
Excuse me?
you're a little over time. If you could wrap up.
Okay,
your
I'd
comment.
like to submit 4 documents for the record. One is the agenda for the June 2024 meeting. The next is the resolution of necessity that was going to be before you on June 2024, resolution number 232426. The next is the agenda for today's meeting, and then the resolution of necessity that's going to be considered today. Number 242504.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments from the public?
I don't have any more comments from the public turned in
Okay.
or
Anyone
online.
Thank you. Anyone online?
No.
Thank you. Okay, I could take a motion. motion?
I'll make a motion.
You need
All right, I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion by trustee Griffin and second by trustee Land. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee Chavez,
Aye.
trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
trustee Land,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Motion passes. Okay, going on to item 6, approval of a public hearing for adoption of a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the San Mateo Union High School District authorizing and directing the condemnation of certain real property in the County of San Mateo, State of California, and declaring the public necessity therefore for the Peninsula High School expansion project, the resolution. Based on the board's approval of the notice of exemption approval of the notice of exemption for the Peninsula High School expansion project, and B, approval of the Peninsula High School expansion project, the board would like to call the agenda item for the public hearing. Public hearing for adoption of a resolution of the Board of Trustees of San Mateo Union High School District authorizing and directing the condemnation of certain real property in the County of San Mateo, State of California, and declaring the public necessity therefore for the Peninsula High School expansion project, the resolution. And 2, consideration of adoption of resolution. Notice of the public hearing was mailed to the property owner of 870 Hinckley Road, Burlingame, and the property owner's attorney, Andrew Turner, on or about August 26, 2024. Courtesy notice of the public hearing was published in the San Mateo County Times, a newspaper of general circulation, on August 30th, 2024. The purpose of the hearing is to receive comments to the board's consideration of the adoption of the resolution that A, the public interest and necessity require the project, B, the project is planned or located in the manner that would be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury, and C, the property is necessary for the project. The board declares public hearing open to receive comments, but before receiving comments, the board would like to acknowledge receipt of the following 2 documents, which were posted to the published agenda and made available for public review room and are made a part of the record of these proceedings concerning item W.6 and item W.7. Letter from Andrew Turner, attorney for Paul Leninger, and ABX Engineering dated June 17th, 2024. Letter from ABX Engineering dated June 18th, 2024. Oh no, I lost my place. Forgive me, I lost my place. Here we go. The board would like to also acknowledge that Mr. Turner has submitted the following 3 additional documents/items after the agenda was published, and these documents/items will also be made a part of the record of these proceedings concerning item W.6 and item W.7. Letter from Mr. Turner dated September 9th, 2024. 11 photographs of the interior of the ABX Engineering property located at 875 Stanton Road. An ABX machinery video, 875 Stanton Road. I will now open up the public hearing. Are there any questions or comments from the public? Okay, I hear none. Are there any?
One moment.
Okay.
Did you have one for item 6? I didn't have that written down.
So I'm not sure whether you want us to speak to this in item 6 or item 7.
Probably during, right now during the public hearing, I would say.
Okay.
That doesn't necessarily prohibit you from making commentary during item 7 as well. But since it is the public hearing, this is probably the best place to make commentary.
So,
Would that be Mr.?
Mr.
Turner?
Leininger will go
Lein-
first. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Paul Leininger. Thank you.
Good evening, illustrious San Mateo Union High School board members. Thank you for having us. And my name is Paul Leininger. And these wonderful people, we work together at ABX. I have traveled the Burlingame circles for the past 44 years, since 1980. I'm big on education and I'm all for it. My dad was a teacher of the year for the state of Kansas, and he retired after 42 years of teaching. In 1960, we moved to California. He was a high school counselor, the guidance counselor, the Air Force recruiter, and he was in charge of all the nighttime activities for the city of Anaheim's Parks and Rec department. So he did a lot. Myself, I've coached basketball since 1981 in the high school grade. I've coached baseball at Burlingame Youth Baseball Association, BYBA, and Hillsborough Little League. I played the Burlingame softball leagues and played on a team called Off Deck for 35 years. I've coached grade school volleyball, soccer, and track. And our biggest claim to fame is my girls basketball team set a record since the inception of the league. That's 45 years, and is still running from 4th grade all the way through 8th grade, including league play, tournaments, playoffs, and championships, and never lost a game. And that include different members and different injuries and COVID too. So they're awesome. Okay, so ABX has 2 buildings and they're back to back for a total square footage of 40,000 feet. It took a very long time for us to achieve this synergy. It took us, and this is actually a relatively small space in this market of contract manufacturing. At 875 Stanton, we do the sub-assemblies. That's the pictures you saw with the videos and the movies and the people. And when I say sub-assemblies, it's all the stuff that goes in this, all the, the green boards with all the components on it and so forth. Warehousing is a very important part of our company and this industry. We house both pre and post-assembly materials and enclosures. So like the circuit board goes in here and then the enclosures go around it. And when we ship it, it's actually a tested, finalized unit that the public or different commercial companies would use. Our largest customers have palletized shipments that come in from all over the world. And we also order in large volumes, and that's where we inventory it in 880 Hinckley. The fulfillment process ships from this location to all around the world. Cutting off our warehouse space means we lose our biggest customers and business would gradually atrophy away. A loss of $10 million per year is hard to backfill with a lot of small orders and only supplying small assemblies. The income loss would be followed by our employees' job losses. All our employees are cross-trained.
Mr. Leininger, can you start wrapping up your comment? I'm sorry.
Sure. Is it the time limit?
Yeah, 3 minutes each.
Okay, well, 44 years, I should get a little bit more than 3 minutes, but okay. I'll skip a few things. We have proprietary software systems that took a long time. It's a very valuable asset. Starting in 2000, our 401k program and profit sharing has accrued $8.7 million. It is a very successful plan, and especially for the size of our company. The John Hancock comparative block for that same size of a company is 4.5 million. As compared to our industry standards, it's 4.1. ABX is 100% employee participation. We rank higher than Google, and we are only in the manufacturing sector. So we have a lot of, our average tenure per employee is 17 years. ABX is geared and founded for employees' benefit. No outside investor or stockholders get a return on their investment is ever paid out. The decisions that we have made have not been for the benefit of stockholders, but for the investments well chosen for our own future. By way of example, the Siemens pick-and-place equipment seen in the video costs $900,000 each.
Okay.
This is an organic company raised up
We're
from
way
our
late
own
for
financial
time.
sales with no outside investors. Each year,
Okay.
we pick the best equipment, production equipment, software, technical support equipment to position us to be very competitive going forward. We are an electronics company. Well, I'm going to skip this, but our pass rate is 99.6%. It's very high quality. Our business projections and our manufacturing is all done in the United States. During COVID, we were declared an essential business producing COVID-related sanitizing equipment for container shipments, medical equipment for ventilators and hospitals. We worked for 2 life science companies that said we had to stay open to support their research to create a vaccine for COVID. Pfizer actually did it. ABX has, we've supported college internships and
Wrap up your comment.
hired for many there. Pardon?
Just respectfully, please just wrap up your comment.
Okay. For ABX, this is not a matter of convenience and a parking lot, but rather prime importance for our existence. I don't want this to be a governmental bully that moves in on a block and releases a gang of dollar cashing lawyers on an outstanding, generous company with a 44-year track record. This is a great value to businesses and a valuable human resource accomplishments that have been made over these years. So I implore you, please, 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 and thank you very much for your time and considering this plea. The San Mateo Union High School District Board, take the parking lot next to 839 Hinckley. This is the building you bought from me in 2016. It is directly across from the high school and it is next to your district offices currently. This property has a large parking lot and it is further than the 500 feet you need to be from the highway.
Thank you.
Good solution.
I've given you about 4 extra minutes.
Thank you very
I need you
much.
to wrap up. Thank you.
And all of us at ABX and the Burlingame community wish you the best regards and thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
We have one additional speaker, President Andrade Zuniga.
Okay.
He's turned in a comment card. This is Mr. Turner.
Thank you. I just really need to remember that I want to remind you that you have 3 minutes and please just stick to the 3 minutes because that is a policy that we abide by for every single public speaker. Thank you.
Well, actually, I'm here on behalf of the owner of the property and the business of the property. I have 2 clients, so I respectfully request that I get at least 6 minutes to address this.
I don't know. What is the board? What does the board think?
It's 3 minutes, but what we can do is, you said it yourself, what Dr. Booker said is number 7 is another opportunity to speak. So we can divide it up into 2 parts, like 3 minutes now and 3 minutes later.
Well, I would like the record in one place for later on. And so if you could give me the consideration of letting me do it all at once, and then I will promise not to get up at the next item, whatever you, but that's my preference.
All right, that's fair. All right, but the next time you don't get to. I just, it's late and we want it also.
Yeah, I know, but this is also very important to us.
Yeah. Okay.
Excuse me?
I said, it's,
Okay.
we do want to give you the time.
Okay.
Now we have a policy that we have, so.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Again, my name is Andrew Turner. I'm the attorney for Paul Leininger and also ABX Engineering. Mr. Leininger is the owner of 870 Hinckley. Before an agency initiates the eminent domain proceeding, It has stringent requirements that it must meet, and that is put in place to protect the property owner. Here in this instance, as in most instances, you have a property owner that's not wanting to sell the property. So the agency is considering using awesome power to take the property using the power of eminent domain. So legislature have put in strict requirements that an agency must follow in order to take private property. It's there for a reason and for a purpose. Here, the district has not come close to meeting those requirements. Number one, and all the requirements that you have, or the decisions that you make have to be based on substantial evidence. So you have to have substantial evidence that the proposed project is most compatible with the least private injury. The only mention of private injury in the staff memo or anywhere that I've found is that, quote, district staff believes the property provides the best fit for the project and will cause the least private injury, end quote. And that's in page 1 of the memo. There's no evidence that it's been considered and that the injury to ABX has been considered. It's only what the staff believes. There's no substantial evidence. What's the injury to ABX? Historically, for the 40 years, ABX has always had two locations because one location is for the production, which needs to be clean. The other location is for assembly, staging, shipping, painting. He has two locations, and that's the way it's always been. So he purchased Stanton behind Hinckley. He put in millions of dollars to prepare Stanton to become the production center. Hinckley used to be the production center, and he converted it. And he's been using them both together. This synergy, the same synergy that the district is looking for in acquiring it, and that's part of the reason that it wants to acquire the property next door. The gross of this business is 20 million plus a year. If you take this property, there will be huge damages to the business. So the district will be paying for the loss of goodwill. Goodwill in the before condition versus the goodwill in the after condition. If Mr. Leininger cannot find another place to go, and he's tried, and he's so far cannot find any, that damage is going to be huge. That damage is going to be larger than what you pay for the property. So you're going to buy the property, and you're also going to buy a business, which you're not going to own. The injury is going to be huge. Why not? There's no evidence of what's been considered about taking the property next door or behind. What's the injury that's going to occur if that happens? And then there's statements within the staff memos that those properties aren't available. Well, this property is not available either. And so you need to look into the personal injury, and it has not been the private injury, and it has not done that. Next, you have to have substantial evidence that shows that the offer pursuant to the government code has been made. The proper offer. And the government code requires that you need to provide a summary of an appraisal with details sufficient to indicate clearly the basis for the appraisal. The appraisal summary that you've provided includes that the appraiser used a market data approach and he used the income approach. And what has he provided to support that? 5 sales with the date of sale and the address. Nothing else. Date, address. We don't know how big it is. We don't know whether it's commercial, whether it's business, whether it's a home. He provides that to support his opinion of $475 a foot. That's the basis that's provided. And then also the income approach. He provides 5 leases. Date, address. Is it commercial? Is it a home? Is it 1,000 square feet? Is it 10,000 square feet? What's the rent? All we know is that's what was relied on to come up with a $1.90 industrial gross fair market rent opinion. What if your property is being taken? Your home, you're in the middle of where the freeway is going, and you get an offer of $2 million for your home. Well, what's this based on? It's 5 sales with addresses and dates. Well, how big were those homes? How big were the lots? Were they 5-bedroom, 2-bedroom? Were they a home? That is not detail sufficient to clearly show the basis of the appraisal. That's what's been provided here, and that is not what is required by the government code. You have to provide much more, and it's not been done. Third, the education code provides prior to commencing acquisition, you need to evaluate the site selection at a public hearing. That hasn't been done. Prior to commencing acquisition, with a property within 500 feet of the freeway, you need an air dispersion modeling required. That's not been done. 4, you need CEQA compliance. I submit to you, as I did earlier, that a categorical exemption is not proper compliance with CEQA in this instance. 5, you need proof that the property is necessary for the project. Why
Yes,
is it
sir.
necessary to take an acre? Is it
Sir,
necessary to take an acre?
You have 30 seconds left.
Thank
Start
you.
when
It's necessary to take an acre because that's what there is. You don't have to take the entire property. What's the proof? Why do you need an acre? Why don't you just take a half acre? I submit to you, the district at this point does not have the authority to take this property. It has not done what is required by the law. And if you do pass the resolution and file a complaint in eminent domain, we'll challenge the right to take, and this is not a threat, it's what we'll do. And if we prevail, you will pay the litigation expenses of the owner and the business owner for the work done to do that. And so based on the foregoing, I request that this board reject and not adopt the resolution of necessity that's before you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, I will now close the public hearing. Going on to item 7, consideration of adoption of resolution 24-25-04, authorizing and directing the condemnation of certain real property in the county of San Mateo, state of California, and declaring the public necessity therefore for the Peninsula High School expansion project, the resolution. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you. Staff has prepared a board memo for the board's consideration of the resolution of necessity for approval. As summarized in the board memo, the purpose of the resolution is to allow the district to acquire the property at 870 Hinckley Road, Burlingame, California, by the board's power of eminent domain for the Peninsula High School expansion project. The property is owned by Mr. Paul Leininger and is located immediately adjacent to the existing Peninsula High School campus. Based on an appraisal obtained by the district on August 16th, 2023, the district gave Mr. Leininger and his attorney, Andrew J. Turner, notice of offer to purchase the property for $4,446,000. Based on an updated appraisal on August 26, 2024, the district renewed to offer the purchase the property for $6,446,000. Based on the board's action in adopting a notice of exemption, the property is not located within a current or former waste disposal site or near facilities with hazardous air emissions. The property is also not located within a geological fault line per California Department of Conservation mapping. As further summarized in the board memo, the project will allow the district to meet the critical needs of administration, staff, and student for office space, conference rooms, communal spaces for assemblies, rallies, and school-wide events, outdoor recreational areas, and parking at Peninsula High School. To adopt the resolution, the board must find that the property is not a current or former waste disposal site, is not on a geological fault line, and is far enough away from facilities with hazardous air emissions. The board must also find the following. 1, the public interest and necessity require the project. 2, the project is planned or located in the manner that would be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. 3, the property is necessary for the project. District staff and its consultants, including its legal counsel, Sean Absher of Stradling, Yoka, Carlson, and Routh, have carefully considered the concerns and arguments raised by Mr. Leininger and attorney Andrew Turner and believe the board has the authority to consider the resolution. Staff and Mr. Absher are available for any board questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the Board of Trustees with respect to the adoption of resolution 24-25-04, authorizing and directing the condemnation of certain real property in the county of San Mateo, state of California, and declaring the public necessity, therefore, for the Peninsula High School expansion project, the resolution?
There's.
Okay.
Yeah. Could Mr. Hawkins or Mr. Absher answer the question of why this property does the most public good with the least private injury? And also what other adjacent properties were explored?
The issue of public good versus private harm was considered. The public good here is very high because it is located adjacent to Peninsula High School. If you want to talk about synergy, there really is no other opportunity for Peninsula High School to expand if it's not an adjacent space. In terms of other properties, there were no other properties that were available that create the access and synergy, to use the word that Mr. Leininger and his attorneys have used, for Peninsula High School. This project involves the expansion of the high school at a property that, by Mr. Leininger's own admission in the record, and that's his June 18th letter, is a support facility. That is, the private harm here is taking a property that is used as a support facility. By Mr. Leininger's own admission, listing the inventory at 870 Hinckley consists of things like pallets, lift jacks, saws. That use can be duplicated virtually anywhere at any property. And the district will be providing relocation benefits for ABX in terms of finding an alternate storage facility. So we're talking about a project that, by Mr. Leininger's own admission, provides support. It is not the 875 Stanton property that's being taken here. District is not taking a highly performing, high precision manufacturing property. District is proposing to take, again, Mr. Leininger's own words, can read his June 18th, 2024 letter. He describes 875 Hinckley as a support facility. That is not significant private harm balanced against the significant public good that would be created by this project.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Another question, although it mostly got answered by the district's attorney. You know, we've invested a significant amount of effort on our part doing our due diligence. And, you know, the circumstances are unfortunate. And I just want to confirm, and I got to look at people that are our district people, that we've done all our due diligence and that we're on solid ground in taking this action, because it's not something we should do lightly. So
it is not a recommendation that we make lightly.
Yeah.
This is a strong recommendation from the superintendent and staff, along with our legal counsel, CEQA consultants, and all of our consultants. So especially myself, this is a very strong recommendation.
Speak one more time.
thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I just want to have one clarifying question. I know we've mentioned this, that we have received photos. I don't know if this is attached to the agenda or not. But we received photos of a workplace with a lot of activity going on, production. I just wanted to confirm this is not the location that we're.
Correct. That is the Stanton location, not the Hinckley location.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
speak one more time?
Okay.
Ms. Andrade Zuniga, Mr. Turner is requesting from the audience to speak again. I don't think you may not have heard that request from the audience.
No, I did not hear that. I'm getting to that in a second. I just wanted to see if there were any other questions or comments from the board first. Okay. I'm sorry. So yeah, now it was the public comment time. So can you repeat what you said?
He just requested to speak, to provide public comment again.
But we had agreed that we would give 6 more minutes. So I'm gonna say no.
May I have 3 minutes, please?
What you're hearing from the audience is Mr. Leininger requesting 3 minutes for public comment.
No, we already had an agreement. I don't think, no.
So-
it's getting really late. Yeah.
Ms. Andrade Zuniga, so I think the agreement was that Mr. Turner received 6 minutes to provide comment during the public hearing in lieu of 3 minutes of public hearing and 3 minutes during this particular agenda item. So now we have Mr. Leininger, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, I think I am. Mr. Leininger requesting 3 minutes, which one may argue is appropriate.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Leininger?
Thank you.
3 minutes.
Mr. Abner's characterization of it being a support is totally wrong. This is a gentleman that has no experience in what we do, 0. Not only that, I have 44 years of doing it, as does some of my employees here have 40 years. What happens on those lines that you see there? Like I said, that's a 20,000 foot footprint there. We compete with China. This is stuff that we build for Teledyne, all these other huge companies. And what we do is we line these feeders up and build it. And then if we're short anything, we have to run over to the support place, which is our 880 Hinckley. It saves us an amazing amount of time. If we didn't do that, we would have, build 500, you have 5 short. Now you got to break down the machine and all your time is wasted because you can't possibly ever build that back up. Because what happens is, it is the time that it takes to run the boards is insignificant almost. The time to set it up and get all the feeders full, you should come over and look and see what I'm talking about. Because this is not the characterization. A support, oftentimes, that whole facility is together. It's warehouse, manufacturing, everything. We're in Burlingame, and we've been here all along, and we've actually have many employees that have grown up in this industry. And I'm talking every nationality, and it's amazing. Some own 2 homes because of our profit sharing and so forth. And in the Bay Area, that's amazing. The other part to this is, we buy these pallets. Pallets sounds like a warehousing. It is, because we have to go and bring those componentry and so forth, and we assemble that. And all the small sub-assemblies go in there. We can't sit there and go across town and then go back and forth. It's just illogical. And by the way, what about the property directly behind 860 Hinckley? That place has been for sale and it's on and off. If you're going to demo and go, that's very contiguous. As, like I said, the property directly across. That's 5 business condos. The lease runs out, they have nothing there. This is an owner-occupied building with high voltage, all kinds of things put in there that you do as an owner that you never do as somebody that leases a piece of property. You make it so that it's dialed into exactly what you want. We have air systems because we have to get what holds these parts. It spins around and picks them up on a tape, and the tape presents it and it peels it back and it picks them up. It's the accuracy of 1/37th of a human hair. And in 1 hour, it'll put on 50,000 parts, all kinds of parts. It switches nozzles while this is going. We have inside, up above the T-bar ceiling is a manifold system. and it's 2-inch copper piping. And the reason that's up there is because for us to run it outside and to a tank, a pressure, because it works by shooting air, and the Venturi effect creates the vacuum. So that every time the
Can you start wrapping
pressure
up your-
drops,
Start
it's
wrapping
too
up your
far away.
comments.
So we put it up in
Please.
the ceiling. But I'm just trying to give you an idea of what that is. And thank you for the extra time. Sorry. I'm
Yeah.
trying to give you an idea that support is not someplace in, across town or somewhere far away. Support means we could go over there and get it immediately, keep the lines running, get the job finished, and move on to the next one. We have to be very competitive. We actually sell to China. So, I mean, we do amazing things with a very small staff. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, would a trustee care to make a motion to adopt the resolution based on the following findings?
I'll
The
make the
public-
motion to adopt the resolution 242504.
Hold on, I gotta finish the rest of it.
Okay.
The public interest and the public interest and necessity require the project. 2, the project is planned or located in the manner that would be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. And 3, the property is necessary for the project. Can I get the motion? So trustee Land made a motion.
Just repeating the motion, I make the
Yes.
adoption of the resolution 242504.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Second by trustee Griffin. Okay. We'll do the roll call. Trustee Griffin, how do you vote?
Aye.
Trustee Chavez,
Aye.
trustee Jacobson,
Aye.
trustee Land.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. Thank you. Motion passes. All right, we're going on now to board operations. Dr. Black.
We have legislative updates. If you have any questions, please let me know. For information, it'll be on the consent next meeting.
Great, thank you. Okay, any future board agenda items?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, you know.
I'll go first. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to talk about with math is math pathways and working with our partner districts. I would like to hear kind of an update or kind of a summary of what's going on at some point in time.
Just to clarify, so what I'm hearing you say, I want to repeat back just so staff's clear. What you're wanting to know is, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, let me know. You want to know our current math pathways and then how our various different partner districts are feeding into
yes,
into those pathways.
Exactly.
Great.
Yes. In
Okay.
all our
Yeah,
high
because
schools.
we have multiple partner
Exactly.
districts. Yeah, okay. Thank you. And we also have different pathways at
That's
different of our
exactly
schools.
what I wanted to
Yes.
hear
Okay.
and
No,
talk
I
about.
don't think we did.
Wait, what's the problem?
Sorry. Yeah, just point of order. We're point of order. Thank you. We're just wondering if we missed X board operations for review and discuss the board
We're doing-
policy.
No,
he-
Dr.
we
Black
did
did that.
No, yeah.
Oh.
We're on-
He just told me.
yeah.
Well, that must have been like 20 seconds. Okay, or
Literally,
seconds.
literally
10
20
seconds.
seconds.
I know it's going to go to consent.
All
Yeah.
right, what was
Did
that?
you have any
So sorry.
questions? He has to be.
No, I didn't. I just didn't want to miss anything.
If you
Okay.
do, let
Thank
me
you.
know.
Thank you. We'll see it on, I knew we'd see it on the consent next meeting.
That's
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have math,
Yeah, math
President Andrade
pathways.
Zuniga, math pathways, I heard.
Okay. But there was another one, I think it was Jennifer, trustee Jacobson, I think you had
Yeah.
another one.
Yes, after visiting the Career Expo last night and having some conversations, I would like to bring back a follow-up to the board about our CTE pathways and graduation requirements.
Okay. So CTE pathways as well. Are there any other requests? Okay,
None, but thank you for checking.
sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said I have none. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Anybody are there any public comments on this item?
No.
Okay, Thank you. Okay, being that there are no other comments on this item, we will now move to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very